Studio and classroom. Boucher returned to Pinellas County after 10 years in Chicago, where she studied at the School of the Art Institute of Chicago and worked as a metalsmith. While teaching at the seminal charter school Plato Academy, she was inspired to create her unique studio space and public studio space, opening up the world of art practice to diverse audiences. Of course, we were going to have Rebecca Sexton Larson, who with her husband Matt Larson started Bob's Photos. It's a mobile photography studio and workshop that is inside of an Airstream trailer. It's quite beautiful, and we're saddened that she can't be here, but we're going to continue. Bluebird Books is a literary-themed mobile project housed in a converted short bus. Art bookshop, public art house. It's a vehicle where readers of all ages can explore the written word. So we have member Mitzi here. She's a writer, editor, and artist who works currently as executive director of Creative Pinellas. Bluebird Books is the latest incarnation of her lifelong love affair with books and writing, and she holds a journalism degree from New York University. We're going to have about 10 to 15-minute presentations from our speakers, and then we're going to have a larger discussion about these projects, the similarities, the differences, and of course there'll be opportunities for questions from the audience. Without further ado, Carrie Boucher.
So Catherine already kind of introduced the project, so I'm not going to cover that again. But if I had to identify a theme of my talk today, it would be how the creative spirit is resilient, and that is just the number of people who came out today is a really good example of how the creative spirit is resilient. Everybody had every reason to stay home today, stay at work today, and not participate in this, but for some reason you came out, and that's a testament to the creative spirit being thrown a lot of hurdles and still persevering. So, and the creative spirit will find abundance and find a way to thrive in the humblest of circumstances, and that's kind of what my project is about and what my talk is about today. So, as Catherine said, I am here speaking on behalf of Nomad Studio. It is not just me. This is not my project. This is a community project. So I will speak of my experience, but I can't speak for everybody who's involved in Nomad. It takes a huge crew of volunteers and people who dedicate a lot of their life to what we're doing. So I just want to acknowledge that first. So our mission, basically, if I had to boil our mission down just to a few words, it would be providing access to hands-on visual arts programming. And we do that aboard the Nomad Art Bus, which is pictured here. So I'm going to give you a little bit of background about me, and then I'm going to go back and talk more about the project. So I come from pretty humble beginnings. I grew up here in Pinellas County. I'm a product of the public school system here in Pinellas County. If I had to describe myself in just a few words, it would be that I'm a visual processor. So from the time I was little, I take information in visually. That's how I process information. That's also how I communicate to the world. So Mitzi can attest to being in meetings with me, and my notes in meetings end up looking like just a scribble all over. But people don't ask me to take notes at meetings because nobody can understand what it is that I'm taking. But all of the pictures that I draw during a meeting make sense to me, and that's how I go about this world. So you combine that with a pretty robust, at the time I was in high school, a pretty robust art department at the high school that I was at, and you know, it produces somebody who feels really comfortable identifying as an artist. And I'm going to get back to the school system and how the arts are, you know, what's happening with the arts in the school system. In just a moment, that's going to come full circle. But I am a product. I just want to say that I'm a product of the Pinellas County school system. So I made my way through the public school system. Financially, I didn't have the means to go straight into college after high school, so I worked full-time and took classes at St. Pete, then junior college, and I exhausted the art program there. Once I took every art course that school offered, I was financially prepared there to go on to art school. So I went to the School of the Art Institute of Chicago, studied, my concentration was sculpture, and I did a lot of work in metalsmithing and ceramics. Being from, as I said, I've always been, and still am, in a place financially where I have to make do with what I have. So when I started studying metalsmithing, a lot of people were going more into the traditional jewelry making. I found beauty in things that people would throw away, so candy wrappers and bottle tops and antique ephemera and things like that. So my focus was kind of making do with what you have. And conditions are not always going to be ideal, but if you are driven to make the world around you more beautiful, you can find ways to do that with the simplest of things. So I lived and worked as a metalsmith in Chicago for about 10 years, and a few years ago, about 4 years ago, I was ready for a big change in my work, and there were also some changes going on in my life at that time. So I was ready for kind of a big shift in my life. And one of the things I thought about was traveling. I've always loved to travel, and I thought if I got a bus and made a metalsmithing studio on a bus, I could just travel all over the United States or all over, North America and live and work as a traveling artist. It didn't make a lot of sense at that point, but I just kept that in the back of my mind. I booked a trip. I booked a flight to Peru, and I just thought I'm going to remove all of the influences that I have in my creative life and in my life in general, and just kind of get back to isolate myself and find out, tap into my core creative processes again. So I traveled to Peru, and I didn't take any art supplies with me, knowing that I can create art out of anything that I find. So, it was for practical reasons. I couldn't take anything with me. I just couldn't travel with that much. So I got to the village, and I started doing some drawings and watercolor studies. And they were doing some work in the village. And you can see at the bottom right-hand photo, there's a trench in the plaza of the village that I lived in when I was there. And one day, I was 3 or 4 days into my 6 weeks there, I noticed that there was a vein of clay running through that trench, and I found what I was going to be doing for the rest of my time there. So I was that crazy lady in the plaza digging clay out of the ground, and I would go for hikes into the jungle and dig clay, and I would go into the river and dig clay out of the riverbed. And I worked clay, I processed clay. So if you with clay, you dig it out of the ground, there's a lot of sand and debris and things like that, so you have to process it to be able to use it, and that's what I did the whole time I was there. So I was processing clay and creating these pods that were inspired by the surroundings that I found in the jungle. So this is what I was doing while I was in the jungle. The time for me to leave the jungle came, and I wanted to, as a sign of gratitude for the people who were so hospitable to me there, I wanted to have an exhibition just to show my gratitude to them. So I didn't make any announcements. I just started hiding my pods in the plaza for people to find, and I just wanted them to kind of have this really beautiful experience of discovery. And of course, as you would expect, the kids were the first ones to find them, and they became very interested in what these things were that they were finding all over the plaza. And I had processed more clay than I used. So there was still clay back in the studio that I was using, and I thought rather than have it dry up when I left, I would just go get the leftover clay that I had, and I would bring it into the plaza, and I would play with the kids with the clay, not knowing that we would be doing that late into the night. So I don't even know what time it was, but we were in the plaza until very late, just making and playing with clay, which seemed a really appropriate activity to be doing at that point, because 2 days before I went to Peru, I had interviewed for an art teacher position for a elementary and middle school art teacher position here in Pinellas County. So this was kind of confirmation that I was on the right path. I still didn't know exactly it told me to go forward and, you know, being an art teacher might be a good thing for me to explore right now. So I came back and I was an art teacher for 1 year in Pinellas County Charter School. I loved having the students around me. I loved teaching, and for selfish reasons, I loved having the tools and supplies of art making at my disposal at any time. It was a really fantastic environment. What I did not love is that all of my students from 3rd grade up were pulled for tutoring for FCAT from every single art class. So I did not have one complete class of 3rd grade and up students the whole time I was there, because it was the school policy to always strive to improve FCAT scores. So I never saw all of my students at one time. And I knew that I wasn't going to change that system, and I knew that yelling and screaming and complaining about it was not a very proactive thing to do. So I started thinking about what I could do to kind of counteract that mentality or that philosophy in school. And I started thinking about access and who should have access to programming. And my thoughts of that started with the school system, but it kind of expanded from there, because there are a lot of people, not only students, who don't have access to art and art programming. And it started me thinking about who should have access and how they could get access. Because even here in St. Pete, has a huge support for the arts, and we have a lot of free programming. But there are people who, not only do they not have access to this art programming, they don't have access to transportation to get them to this art programming. So that thought came to me that I was going to have to be the one traveling. So I would have to be the one to get the art to the people. I couldn't expect them to come to a bricks and mortar location to come and get free art programming. So at that point, my focus as an artist shifted, and I had always identified as a visual artist and somebody who makes products for people to experience and products for the market. And at that point, I kind of started more thinking about the community and community access in a lot of different ways, not only to art, but to things like transportation and resources. And my focus shifted from the experience of a product that I was making to an experience of a process, to the art process. I wanted everybody to be able to feel what I feel when I am in the process of making art. So this was about halfway through the school year, and I really started thinking this way. So I wanted to get some feedback. I started a Facebook page. This was about February of 2014. And at that time, I got in touch with Mitzi. I was doing some research about mobile art projects and found Mitzi's website. Had no idea at first that she was local, and then I found out she was out of Tampa. So I got in touch with Mitzi and was basically like, I have this idea, and it's a huge undertaking. Please talk me out of it. And you know, as you can see, her talking with her only inspired me. So now we have another mobile art bus here in the Tampa Bay region. So about 3 or 4 months after after I started this Facebook page with this idea, a bus was donated to the project by an auto repair shop down in Venice, Florida. So it became real. It's like, okay, Carrie, now you have to do this. You have no choice. You have a bus now. So strangely enough, this was a former Arlington Transit mobile commuter store, and Arlington Transit goes by art. So this was an art bus from the very beginning, and it is again an art bus in a very different way. So as we were doing the demo, we kept finding all this signage about the art bus, the art bus. You can see down in the bottom corner if there was a delay in the art bus service. So this, I felt this was destined to become the art bus here in this area, which is fantastic. So we had a lot of work to do on the inside. There was a lot of water damage, so we completely demoed the inside. Pit Stop Auto Repairs donated all of the parts and the labor to get the bus up and running again. It had been sitting for a few years and it was in pretty bad shape. I want to acknowledge that, because that's pretty mobile art bus idea, and she was in a position to invite us to debut at Gasparilla Festival of the Arts, which was phenomenal. I hoped for a good response. I had no idea how people would interact with the art bus. We had no signage, still have no signage on the outside of it. I didn't know if they would know what it was or how to participate with it. But as you can see, we had points in the time that we had there that there were so many kids who wanted to get on the bus and participate that we didn't have enough room for any more to. So I started passing crayons out to the kids outside and just let them color on the outside of the bus. I knew it was going to be a really big job buffing all of that crayon out. I knew that. But I didn't want to lose them. I wanted them to have the experience. And to me, the experience is always worth that extra effort. So if I was going to be there buffing that bus, I was going to do it because I wanted them to have that experience. And by the way, we've changed the paint now, temper paint, which we wash off. It does not require buffing. That is incredible. Okay, so for months before I knew the bus was coming up this way, I was begging on social media for somebody to give us somewhere to park this bus. We have this 30-foot Freightliner bus. It wasn't going to go in my driveway. So I had been begging and nothing. But I had to bring it to this area, and I had no idea where it was going to go once it got here. We didn't have a parking place for it after Gasparilla. We drove it up from Venice to Gasparilla and had nowhere for it to go after that. So it spent about a month in my brother's backyard, and we just hoped that like, code enforcement wouldn't come and tell us to move it. And then we got notification from a halfway house here in St. Pete that they had a vacant lot adjacent to their property, and they were willing to give us space on the lot because they believed in this project. And that is all they wanted. They just wanted us to have a place to put the bus, which was really incredible. We wanted to give them something in exchange, so for over a year now, we've been doing programming with the residents at that halfway house. 2 nights a week for 2 hours, so 4 hours a week. We provide access to people who are struggling with issues of homelessness, recovery from substance abuse, and people who have just been released from incarceration. And then this really cool thing happened because local artists started finding out about the project and they wanted to be involved, and they participated by painting murals inside the bus. So we have this really beautiful space inside that people can use, and it has been and it continues to be developed by local artists. Then Pinellas County Schools contacted us, and they were looking for somebody to provide after-school visual arts enrichment programming to 3 failing schools in South St. Pete. So we're at Melrose, Campbell Park Elementary, and Fairmount Park Elementary after school, 3 days a week. That started in January, and then we did a summer program with them. That program is expanding for this school year, so instead of 3 schools, I believe we're going to be at 7 schools this coming year. And we are not the craft bus. We do fine art programming. We teach them techniques that I learned in art school. They're not gluing macaroni on paper plates. But one thing that they always love doing, and their favorite thing to do, is paint the art bus. And that is really the main way that we participate with the community. We have a lot of programming inside of the art bus, but people love painting the outside of the art bus, something I didn't even anticipate. This was not something that I even had thought of at the beginning of this, but this tends to be the way that people want to participate with the art bus. So we've gone through over 30 gallons of paint in just about a year of painting the outside instead of using crayons, and that means one of my part-time jobs is a bus washer. I spend a lot of time washing the bus. And one of the beautiful things that I find when people are participating is they get into each other's space, and you see people having conversations that you would have never seen before. And it's like the idea of personal space, like when you're at a concert and you're rubbing up against somebody who's a stranger to you, it's okay because you're having this even better experience outside of that. And that's what I think of when people are getting in each other's space on the bus, because the experience is so good that they're willing to let go of those ideas of personal space and things like that. So the bus gets painted from the bottom up. It always starts with the little kids, and then older kids kind of see the fun the little kids are having. And I hand pencil paint to adults, and they end up painting, and everybody paints until there's white space at the top, but the whole bottom is filled, and then this really cool thing starts then parents start lifting their kids up, and then that evolves into adults lifting other adults up. And pretty soon everybody's having this really amazing time interacting with the bus in a way that, I never anticipated. But it's all about the experience, and that's what, to me, is so important to highlight, is that that's my phone, so sorry about that. It's about the experience, and to me, that's what this project is about. It's about having an experience with art, and if people can walk away and, they're not an amazing artist. And, I come from a fine art background, and I'm kind of an art snob, but this has taught me that if I can send somebody away having had a really great experience with art, then I've done my job. They don't have to walk away having created a really beautiful piece of artwork. They have to walk away having had that experience in their heart and in their soul with art in a good way. So I'm going to go back to Access, and I'm going to tell a quick story about something that happened just maybe a month ago. Stitching, that's not my background in art, but I have guest teachers who work with me, and I try to think about what their strengths are, and I think it's really important to have influences from other people than just myself. So we had a guest artist, Sarah Noreen James, who's pictured with the braids on the right-hand side over here. She is a handwork artist and also a photographer. And we were working with the students at the schools that we were at, and one of the students was really good at stitching, and she was only like in second or third grade, and we could tell she had stitched before, and she said that she stitches to calm herself. So we thought, she probably sits with her mom or her grandma and does embroidery. And so in a conversation with her, she said that she doesn't have a needle at home. So we were like, well, what do you use to stitch? And she said, well, I went in the bathroom and I found a bobby pin, and there are the plastic cushions on it. You have to pull those off or else it won't go through the fabric. And we're thinking, like, she's stitching with a bobby pin. And so we were like, well, what do you use as your, where do you get your yarn? And she was like, I don't have yarn. Sometimes my mom's clothes have strings hanging off of them, and I pull the strings off my mom's clothes. Or if I'm in school and I see a string on the ground, I pick it up. So she collects little bits of string and ties them together to make enough thread to stitch with. And it reminded me of my process back in the beginning when I would just find scraps of things and make jewelry out of it. And it kind of made me laugh and cry. And Sarah and I thought, this girl needs a proper sewing kit. So Sarah had some extra embroidery hoop and some sewing supplies, and then the Pinellas County Schools coordinator, I checked with her to make sure it would be okay for us to give her a sewing kit, and she donated some supplies to this kit. And after we finished our sewing unit, we had some leftover supplies, so we put together a sewing kit for her. And so this is her on the day that we found out she stitched. She was the only one able to make a picture on her stitching. And then this is a picture of when she got the sewing kit, and I just want to really quick read to you what on social media what the Pinellas County Schools coordinator wrote about when she gave the sewing kit to her. When I gave this beautiful young lady her new sewing kit, her hands went to her face and tears streamed down her cheeks. I have watched this little girl go from being shy and timid to being strong and confident. Her weekly art instruction with Nomad Studio has been such a confidence builder for her. Someone cared and made her feel special and talented. It's a beautiful thing to watch a child embrace her passion. And I couldn't agree with that more. With that, I will leave you. There are so many stories like that, but this is the most recent. But with that, I will leave you, and I appreciate your time. My time is up. And I have my cards with me, and I have my little pamphlet, so if anybody wants to know information about our organization, I am always thrilled to talk about it and share it. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Carrie. That sounds
these projects and these concepts today. As mentioned, my name is Mitzi, and I own the Bluebird Books bus. There are a lot of similarities between some of the concepts and twists and turns that my path has taken, and I was hearing those in Carrie's story. I made my first zine at about the age of 6. I didn't know what a zine was, but I wanted to make a carrier vehicle for my stories. I was writing little stories, and I took a piece of construction paper and folded it in half as a cover and stapled the spine and made my first book. And I remember this moment very clearly, being so excited about the possibility of putting my ideas into an object that could be shared. You could give it to somebody, give it to somebody else, and give it to somebody else, and next thing you know, your messaging is going out to this broad audience. I didn't think about that in an elaborate way, but I got the idea, and I was definitely hooked. So a lifelong reader, continued writing throughout college, followed a journalism track, worked as a reporter and an editor for a while, and then was at the Dali Museum for about 4 years, which was an all-encompassing project while they were moving the museum from the old location to the new. And once that was completed, I found myself at a point in my life where I wanted to make a change also. I wanted to bring to life and share with others some of my own creative passions. And I went back to that original book influence, bookmaking, book arts, and reading, and how can I share these with the community. I did look into brick and mortar options, and on the one hand, it was cost prohibitive for me at the time. And again, so similar to Carrie, I'm making do and recycling things and trying to use whatever's at hand to bring a vision to life. And then also, I too had a passion for travel, and I wanted to be able to reach people who maybe wouldn't be able to reach me, and go out and connect at the source, as opposed to forcing people to come to my destination and thus limiting my audience. So I decided to go mobile with the project, and in 2011, summer of 2011, I bought this. So I'm going to touch on 3 kind of main themes in my presentation today. One, the process of making the bus itself, and the transformation that entailed and what I learned. And then the book arts influence that we try to share, and what I've learned about that along the way. And then our engagement with people, encouraging them as readers and as makers. So I bought this bus, and again, I'll echo Carrie's statement. I was like, well, now it's real. I got to do this. I got a bus. As I'm sitting in my parents' driveway, I also had to work out some parking issues. And you'll notice as I go on, I'll start to refer to we a lot, because also this project is not just me. I've worked with an incredible community of artists who have helped me shape the space, who put their books into the space, who've collaborated with me on different projects, and that was true from the very start. If it wasn't for the artist team that I connected with in Tampa, as well as later on over on this side of the way, I never would have gotten past the stage. And I didn't know what I was in for, that was for sure. But fortunately, I spoke with an artist named Joe Griffith, who's based in Tampa, who does fabrication for a lot of the theme parks. So I knew that he would know how to transform large objects. And less sanding and scraping later, we had it ground up. And then there's Joe doing the hard work. And the finished product about not quite 3 months later. At least finished on the outside. So then we begin the demolition. We took out 7 seats, leaving 1 near the rear of the bus. That one on the left there. And that's my stepfather attaching the sign on our first day out in the world. Oopsie. So we had in that open space these shelves installed by some artists who formerly with Creative Arts Unlimited, which is a business in Wells Park that does fixture design and installation for museums and libraries all over the place. I consulted with them on the best way to display a large amount of books in a small space while also maintaining the feel of being inside the bus. I didn't want to transform it so much that you didn't feel like you were still on the school bus, because that is where a lot of the charm comes from. And you can see in this photo early on that art influence taking shape. So the statement that Catherine read before I was introduced about us and this project being at the intersection of books and art is very true. And our mission has always been to engage readers and celebrate a tangible book as a treasure of literature, but also as a treasure of art, and to promote the book arts and explore the changing nature of libraries and how books and objects are grouped and associated and how we learn from that. So you'll see up in the shelving at the bottom for a good portion of our first season, which began in November of 2011, I would organize books by color and encourage people who came on the bus to gravitate toward a certain color that attracted them and see what they found there in the associations between the titles that were next to each other. It's just one small way that we like to bring that concept to life. So we're out in the world, got our promo photos, and we start promoting, and I really have no idea where this is going to take me. I've been so focused on the process itself and getting it up onto the streets, and there's so many different projects that have been suggested and that I wanted to incorporate. So I started off with just a very simple fundraising and promotion phase. We did a Kickstarter to raise some initial funds, and we take the bus out into communities and do some book sales to raise further funds to kind of get core started so that we could then maintain. And in the process now, it's kind of the path has led way over here where I never expected it to be. And as I go on, I'll discover now we do a lot more giving books away than we ever sell any of them. So this is where we are now. Here we are, I guess, so in November it'll be 4 years that I've been doing this project. And the image at the top is looking out the front of the bus. You see all the stickers and signs and various memorabilia from all of our travels and events. And then here at the bottom, I finally consented to have something painted on the outside of the bus. It took me a while. We worked so hard just to change the color. It took me a while to be ready to take it to that next level. But this mural was painted on the bus by James Olson, an artist here in St. Petersburg, is a muralist and a metal sculptor. And I find that it's done wonders in our engagement out in the community. It makes the bus just that much more approachable. It was already charming and colorful and bright, and you're curious about it, but this really makes you come up to the bus, and especially young kids, what's this, what's going on? And then they find out that they can get on board and have an experience inside. So touching on books and art and the relationships there and the things that we express through that, our initial collections were very curated. It started with my home library. This was the library in my home in Tampa, around about the time that I started this project. And I began to partner with together collections that were curated for specific events or specific audiences, depending on where I was going to travel. So here, an event outside of our gallery, and you'll see a lot of film and print work, and Alphabet up in the top right corner is a book actually created by a local artist. Zines, and then from there, starting to explore more handmade books, which was in journals, which is a natural progression for me. Ephemera, vintage ephemera, and curated book collections, so taking groups of vintage books and grouping them by theme. And then into typewriter culture, vintage typewriters, not only as objects of art themselves, but functional, that we can use, teaching people how to use these analog machines, giving them an opportunity to explore and experiment with them. We also work with some local poets who will type on them, add events, and share their work with the community. So just getting more into the design and the art of books and reading culture. I started wrapping books and giving them away, so there was that sense of mystery. People would know what they were getting, and we would say, well, if you open it up and you don't like it, you can find it in your home. So already beginning to then encourage that passing on ethos, which you'll see comes in here real soon. Exploring some handmade books. We've done some workshops teaching others how to make their own book arts and paper arts projects. Origami and a natural fit. Just reusing what's around. So over the years, people have begun to donate books to the project, and sometimes they were damaged on the covers, if they have covers, or they're water damaged. And I really strive to reclaim everything that comes through the project in some way, shape, or form. Even if it's making buttons. And the joke is that even our website is made out of paper. That's on the upper right there, that's Ruben Pressman here and Hurricane works together to actually physically cut out all of the elements that are animated on our website there. So it's definitely bringing that aesthetic to life. Taking that further, we began to do some events with gallery spaces. So here is a book auction. So it's elevating the book as an art object. And there's paper craft strung about, and we have art books on display. You see a gentleman there with white gloves. He's there to turn pages for some of the more expensive volumes. Doing some out in some community spaces, curated book shows, just spreading the message and getting people engaged. It's a familiar site. We had a session out here in front of this museum where we gave some books away and I did some typewriter poetry projects. So we're beginning to build audience over this time. We're beginning to find our niche. This is a project that I've always had to keep going while I also maintain a day job, sometimes part-time, sometimes full-time. And so it's grown in sort of fits and starts, but has always continued on some level throughout this time. Out in the community, beginning to engage with kids and families. People of all types who go to community markets, community centers, outdoor events like Locatopia. And we started to get some recognition. And it felt good it felt very freeing to have mobility. And that idea that we could continue to take this wherever we wanted it to go. when you can find people who are willing to be pushed on a miniature parade float while typing poems that are handed away to crowds of tens of thousands. Those are your people, good people. So we started giving more and more books away as people were giving them to us and becoming a conduit to just get this material back out into communities wherever the bus traveled, wherever we were invited to go. We connected with World Book Night USA, which was for about 3 or 4 years. They did that back here in the States. Unfortunately, it's not going on anymore, but it was a partnership between publishing houses and authors and book distributors, where once a year a set of books printed specifically for the event would be distributed all on the same night by all these different people registered all over the country to distribute books, and we were among them. So that was always a good time for one night. We would load the bus up with books and just randomly pull up to different events out in the community. One on the left was American Station Park. Unfortunately, there's another familiar face here. If you can find somebody who will help you give books away out of the back of your car, you've found a special friend. And so I wanted to put some structure behind this and continue to be able to share a greater volume all the time. So we started building these boxes. These are little free libraries. You may now be familiar with the campaign. At the time, I had heard of the project and was really inspired by it and discovered that there weren't that many installed in Florida, at least according to the map that they keep on the Little Free Library website of where the locations are. So I wanted to begin to plant as many of these seeds as possible. And they went into neighborhoods in both Tampa and St. Pete. There's one in Santa Barbara as well. I also taught some people how to make their own over time and connected them with resources just to continue to spread the idea. You see some other familiar faces there engaging in some of our boxes. And eventually installed a full-scale reading room, lending library at a space over in Tampa. And it's just open to the public during the operating hours of that local business. We also, in working with a variety of artists and writers, as I had mentioned before, brought some making projects to communities. And this is David Gurney. He's a local poet, and he, over the years, became my sort of official captive poet, as we like to call it, and we'll take him around to as many events as he'll agree to participate in, where he will create work on the spot, inspired by our visitors sometimes, and then providing with some suggestions to get him going. And it just creates interactive possibilities. People are really fascinated by the typewriters themselves and the art of the old fonts and the nostalgia that brings forth, as well as, of course, the language itself. So this is just a few quick snapshots from people getting poems at different events, us giving books away in the early stages. There's David in the back of the bus. And we encourage people to explore their own creativity with a number of different offerings, depending on where we're at and what the program is. So everything from vintage flashcards and repurposing and collage arts to origami, as I mentioned before, and bookmaking. This was one of our most successful community art projects. This was called the Silverfish Revolution. This was an opportunity that I had to collaborate with Joe Griffith of Experimental Skeleton, who was there, as I mentioned, from the very beginning, helping me to transform this unusual vehicle. And this was around the time of the Republican National Convention in Tampa, and Joe wanted to provide a vehicle for public dialogue. So I took my donated to me from someone's collection of war stories, war magazines. And so the timing of receiving this material and had people having access to it and being able to incorporate that in some of the imagery that they put out was really fortuitous. And so people would come on the bus and grab their materials and all the tools they needed to make what they wanted, and then the wall was set up outside. And it was this collaborative that was continually built upon throughout the course of the night. 2 different nights was traveled, and people had the chance to add to it. The Read movement is another image. It's an image campaign, basically. So another collaboration that we've done at that intersection. This originally started as a street art piece by an artist in Tampa named Jay Drew that he was inspired to create based on his experiences as a reader and a lover of words. And over time, he found out about my bus. The image became refined, and we began to partner in sharing this image as a way of promoting reading and art. So we have stickers now that are available for free, but with a self-addressed stamped envelope, where people will pay $1 and send them a pack of stickers and we do trade, and begin to get these out in as many places as possible to sort of spread our message even further. So as you can see, up in Seattle, we have some friends in New York who have been sharing them. And the bus itself has had the opportunity to travel further than I ever had expected in this short time, although ultimately the goal is to continue to do more road trips within and without Florida. This, you'll see in the bottom left, we're there with another bus. This is when we were invited to join the Unchained tour, which was an arm of the Moth Storytelling Hour that traveled on the bus to do storytelling events at different locations. This was their last stop in Savannah, and we went up to join them. As you can see, we were very well received. People are not shy about crowding onto the bus when they're inspired by what's inside. So what's next? Looking forward, we want to do more and more collaborations and find more opportunities to travel and get our art and books out into the hands of all those who need them. So hopefully more partnerships with schools and with other local agencies that do great programs. This is an image from a collaboration that we did. You see Nomad there in the back, and the boat was brought by Keepsake Heat Lit. We provided books. We are now working with Keepsake Heat Lit as a project of their nonprofit, essentially enables us to do some grant writing that can expand our program and gives them access to our mobile arm as it's available. With them, we're working on Bookspace, which will be a physical spot, a brick and mortar spot where people can purchase books to help raise funds for the project, but also access books for free that are available from the bus and learn more about what's happening with us, as well as take some classes and book discussion groups and engage with some like-minded readers. My text didn't come out too well, but there's a few links there on where you can find more information about us. We are on Instagram, of course. TrueStoryFoundation.org is where you can learn about all 3 of the projects that I mentioned today, the book bus, as well as the Little Free Libraries and the Read Movement sticker. Thanks, everyone, for your time.
All right, thank you so much to both of you. It is 1 o'clock, but I hope many of you can stick around for a few questions. I think that we've just seen 2 incredible examples of democratizing fine arts, of finding ways to bring experiential art to all sorts of communities. And also, one thing I picked up on was the way that you're engaging people's natural instincts, just the way that they're gravitated towards certain things, the way that they will just pick up that paintbrush and start creating. I think that's just one what is the most powerful parts of what we've heard. I think that because we have limited time, we should jump straight to questions from the audience. I mean, we could be here for hours discussing what we've heard today. But does anyone have any pressing questions that they need to get out?
Where did the Bluebird name come from? Bluebird.
It was inspired from a few sources. Of course, I thought about it for a long time. Words and naming things and titling things is very important to me. There's a Charles Bukowski poem called Bluebird, and it's about essentially someone with a tough exterior that has a bluebird in their heart, as well as some influences from my own past, and that's sort of a nod to some projects that inspired me when I was younger. Free Bird bookstore and Boucher music in April City, so a few different sources, and I liked the alliterative aspect of it. I thought it sounded good in the ear and was friendly and approachable, and that was one of the things that I really liked about putting it on a bus in general as well as just as I started to beam up the brand. Margaret? The book space is going to be located at the Bloom Art Center, which is on Fifth Avenue North, right near MFA here in St. Pete. And it's very tiny, but we're going to be able to fit quite a few books in there anyway. So, and we're hoping to have it at least ready for visitors by August 22nd, which is the next show that's taking place at Bloom. Even if it might still be a little rough around the edges at that point.
We here at the museum are really thinking about words like engagement and outreach. We prefer the word engagement. Right now we have every student from Pinellas family coming through the museum through their world socialization class. And sometimes it is an issue to get the buses here, but we do have sponsors and donors who help us do that. But certainly there's something so powerful about bringing the art to the people, but what are the limitations? Besides logistics and space, how do you make it optimal?
Wow. I think that it's all about logistics. I mean, that is the limitation is logistics. And, we can make it happen. And we always figure out how to make it happen. There is no such thing as, the ideal circumstances are never going to happen. You make it work. And if there's a desire, I always tell people, in the very beginning, we didn't have a brochure, we didn't have a pricing structure, we just told people it's all a conversation. So get into a conversation with us and we'll make it happen. Well, people needed more information in the beginning. It really is about, is there space for us to park and, are there truck routes on the way there? And our space inside is about 7 feet wide by 24 feet long. That's our studio space. It sounds really big, but once you get tables set up in there and chairs and supply storage, that's about maybe 8 kids. So it sounds like a big space, but when you've got 200 kids who want to interact with this space that you can fit 8 at a time, and you're at a school or, at an after-school program or at a camp or something like that. Those are the kind of things that, timing, where, as an art teacher, I had 30 minutes with my students. That's no time at all. And I thought, I'm going to do this art lesson. There's not going to be any limit to the amount of time I have. Well, all of a sudden, I've got 200 kids who want to come through the bus, and I can fit 8 at a time. So those kinds of things just happen. And, just figuring out a way to give everybody access. And that's one thing that the outside of the bus helps me with. Do something on the outside of the bus for a little while.
Similarly, the limitations of space, I'm about 7 feet wide by, on the interior, maybe 12. Yeah. Now, the advantage of having a shorter bus is generally fit into a regular sized parking space. It's a little easier for me to maneuver, but we're still, fairly large, and you have to consider the flow of an event as well. A lot of times, people want you to come out and aren't thinking about the fact that most of their event is taking place inside a space. So you're getting people as they walk by and as they leave. So planning for a more holistic event is, considering your positioning, considering the flow of traffic, and how you're using your outdoor space, whether it's a canopy, a tables, or something like that.
I love both your ambition and your attention to detail and logistics. So this is no problem. Any more questions? And I think,
Your art libraries, those little boxes with the roof, how does that operate? Do you lose, or are they just?
Oh, and they're leave a book, take a book. So everything that goes into them is intended to go back out. They're installed into the ground where mailbox would be, in whatever space will accept them. There's one in front of the Studio 620. There's one in front of Youth Community Center, Community Stepping Stones in Tampa, that's also accessible to that neighborhood in Sulphur Springs. There are some in front of private homes in different locations. And generally, if I can, I will assume responsibility for monitoring and maintenance of those, which just means making sure that it's clean, the locks aren't broken. They don't have a lock per se, but there's a hook eye so the door stays shut. And then that they're continually stocked with books. But you find if you put them in the right places, that happens on its own, because people are giving to them and taking back.
And are they vandalized, or?
So far, we've only had one instance, and I wouldn't even really call it vandalism because it was chalk, and I was able to wipe it right off. It's certainly that there's a possibility for that, but I find that if you just trust and let it go and put it out there, people do respect it because they love what it's providing. And I've had people come up to me on the bus at events far from where any of the boxes were planted, who, as they came to discover that was our project, were expressing, I use the one in St. Pete all the time. I'm so grateful. We can't always afford books for our kids, and we want to be able to get them to read as much as possible. And so you hear things that you can see how they're getting into it organically. You get to start to hear that. And, people have been appreciative enough of it to not point over but you never know. You just got to put it out there and hope for the best. It's still worth it. Like Claire said, any effort, even if it means you got to read